The 5th generation of Pokemon gave us some all-time designs, dragons, badass bug types, and some of the coolest legendaries ever. But for every Hydreigon, there is a Stunfisk. And I don't mean that metaphorically, I mean literally Stunfisk. Come on man, what is this, a pancake with a face? Did Game Freak accidentally sit on a Magikarp and just decide to go with it? You know what, I don't know, and we may never know, but don't get me wrong, I love some of these weird little disasters. I basically exclusively collect stupidly designed Pokemon cards. That's not a joke. But one day I was admiring my collection and I had a horrible but awesome idea. What if I tried to beat Pokemon Black using only the worst designed Pokemon from Gen 5? I'm talking full on trash. And yes, that does include actual trash. I'm talking to you, Garbodor. Now, before you get defensive, yes, you in the comments with a Trubbish plushie, I like some of these too. But come on, deep down we both know these designs were cooked up at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday before a long weekend. This is beating Pokemon Black with Gen 5's ugliest, weirdest, and most cursed designs. Let's see if we can do this. We begin our adventure the same way all mainstream Pokemon games do, and before I know it, I'm in my bedroom picking my starter. Now don't get me wrong, I actually don't think these starters are all that bad, but there is one that most of the internet and myself find worse than the rest. That is of course Tepig, yet another firefighting type and without a doubt the worst of the bunch. The design isn't completely horrible, if anything it's just flat out lazy. I show my friends who's boss, then visit Bianca's house to immediately get involved in her family matters. After leaving I head to the Pokemon lab where I name our starter Pig. After arriving in Accumula Town, we attend a very sketchy rally that gives shades of a certain historical figure, and we are introduced to our next rival, N. We dispose of him quickly, then trudge on to the next city. The first thing I do after getting to Striaton City is head to the Dream Yard to acquire our second team member. Now ideally I would have taken Pansear here, but since we took Tepig as our starter we have to take Pansage. You see, Pansear was actually voted the most hated Pokemon design in all of Japan. It may have something to do with the fact that it's not the first fire monkey in the Pokemon world, and it's infinitely worse than the current one, so the hate is absolutely understandable. Anyways, I name it Pansear to make up for it. Try not to get confused when I refer to my Pansage as Pansear for the rest of the game, and I immediately take it to the Striaton gym to test it out. We're battling Crest this time and he leads with Lillipup, so I go with Pig. I use Ember a couple of times but get flinched on one turn and crit on the next, and unfortunately Pig goes down. I throw out Pansear and outspeed to KO Lillipup with Fury Swipes. Crest sends in his Ace Panpour and we really can't be touched by this thing, so after some Vine Whip spamming, Panpour faints and we win our very first gym badge. We're forced to do some silly task in the Dream Yard, and after we're finished I get jumped by Charon on my way to Lucerne City and I dispose of him super easily. After another quick detour with Team Plasma, Pig decides to downgrade into one of the most disappointing second stage evolutions of all time. I try and enter the second gym, but I'm stopped by N and forced to kick his ass before moving on. After beating the gym puzzle, I find myself face to face with Lenora and we begin our first attempt. She leads with Herdier and I send out Pig. This was quite a favorable start, and after a single arm thrust, Herdier is knocked out. Next is Lenora's Watchog, and needless to say, this thing completely beats down Pig and Pansear. I heal up and run back for attempt 2, and this time I lead with Pansear to try and set up Leech Seed, but we miss and get hit with a powerful takedown. I swap into Pig and get hit with a takedown before I KO Herdier with Arm Thrust. Lenora sends in Watchog and it misses a Hypnosis, so we're free to take it out with Arm Thrust as well. Attempt 2 is a success and we gain our second gym badge. Our break from Team Plasma is very short-lived and we're forced to go and retrieve a stolen Dragonite head. I fight my way through Pinwheel Forest and eventually reacquire the skull. I'm introduced to another of the 7 sages, but luckily the gym leaders rescue us and we're free to continue our journey. I travel over Sky Arrow Bridge and into Castelia City, and it's all of 2 minutes before we yet again have to deal with some Team Plasma BS. I get it over with as quickly as possible and can finally fight Berg for the 3rd badge. Black and White have some incredible story aspects to them, but this stretch between gyms 1 to 3 is quite unbearable. The fight with Berg begins and Pig is facing Whirlipede first. Now since Pig is a fire type, we have a significant advantage in this fight, so Whirlipede is an easy KO. Berg's next Pokemon is Dwebble and I decide to swap to Pansear. I get hit with a crit smackdown before I'm able to set up a Leech Seed. This means Pansear is sacrificed and I get a safe switch back to Pig. Berg uses a Hyper Potion and I'm free to hit Dwebble with a few Arm Thrusts, and that plus the Leech Seed damage gets Dwebble low enough for another Hyper Potion, so I switch strategies using Flame Charge for now. After a couple turns, Leech Seed takes Dwebble out and Berg sends in his Ace Leavanny. With all of our speed boost from Flame Charge, we're free to outspeed and crush Leavanny with a quad effective Flame Charge and earn ourselves the 3rd gym badge on our first attempt. On our way out of town, Bianca stops us again for a battle and we mow her team down no problem. I take only a few more steps through the gate and I'm forced into another rival battle, this time against Charon. Luckily for us, his team is even easier than Bianca's, so I move on from him in no time. I realize at this point I can actually evolve Pansear, so I head back to Castelia City to get the Leaf Stone and do just that. We make it all the way to Nimbasa City and N asks us on a date, so I graciously accept. We ride the Ferris wheel and N tells us he's actually king of Team Plasma. This completely killed the mood, so I take my frustration out on him in a battle. Long story short, he's absolutely no match for our monkey and pig. Before I can challenge the gym, I'm forced into yet another awkward family interaction with Bianca, and luckily the world's greatest family therapist, Elisa, comes along and makes peace with everyone. Before we try the gym, I head to Route 5 to capture my next team member, Trubbish. I name him Fortnite, then immediately head to Elisa to challenge her. She leads with Emolga and I send out Fortnite. We're super slow, so Elisa hits us first and it's an extremely powerful Volt Switch. Basically, the theme of this first battle was we get Volt Switched into oblivion and lose pretty handedly. I head back for attempt 2 and decide to lead with Pig instead. This time, I use Rollout and luckily defeat the first Emolga right away. Elisa sends in her next Emolga, and since Rollout's damage ramps up for each consecutive hit, it's more than enough to KO. Elisa sends in her Ace Zeb Striker and I sack Pig so we can safely switch to Fortnite. I use Sludge to try to poison it, but it doesn't happen and I'm taken out immediately after. This means it's all up to Panseer here, so I take a Flame Charge on the switch so we can set up Leech Seed on the following turn. Elisa stupidly switches to Spark and we hit her with a few very powerful Seed Bombs until Zeb Striker faints and we acquire the 4th gym badge. After the battle, we're stopped yet again by Charon and I have to whoop him before we can move on. We meet the champion of Unova and he makes Charon and I battle against a couple of children for some strange reason. At any rate, we aren't ageist, so we beat them down with no remorse. Afterwards, we take the Driftfield drawbridge and are introduced to the single greatest music in all of Pokemon. There is zero debate here. Clay then rains on our parade and tells us we need to deal with Team Plasma once again. This time, they're in the cold storage, which is no problem at all because it is here where we can get our next team member, Vanillite. I capture it and name it DQ. I make it through the cold storage and walk in on Team Plasma doing unthinkable things to each other. Not to judge, but this is a workplace. HR is going to have a field day with this one, but we're not too worried about that right now. After entirely too much dialogue, they leave at last and we can head into the gym to challenge Clay. The battle starts and he leads with Krokorok. I send in Panseer and my thinking is I could easily one-hit KO with Seed Bomb, and that's exactly what I do. Clay immediately sends in his Ace Excadrill and I can't really hurt me at all, so I keep Panseer in. I attempt to set up Leech Seed and after a few turns I finally get it off. A Seed Bomb plus Leech Seed takes the Excadrill into the yellow and forces Clay to use a Hyper Potion. I use one more Seed Bomb and get a lucky crit which KOs Excadrill in one hit. This means all we have to deal with is Clay's last Pokemon, Palpitoad. This strange looking fella is a water and ground type, so needless to say, a quad effective Seed Bomb is sufficient damage to remove Palpitoad from existence and win us our 5th badge. After the fight, we're bothered yet again by one of our rivals and we have to dispose of her real quick before heading on to Chargestone Cave. Inside the cave, we run into one of the most useless additions to the whole Pokemon franchise. If you're ever feeling down about yourself, just remember, the Shadow Triad solely exists to take your character 5 steps ahead to speak with N. That is literally it. Every single time they appear in this game, they walk you a maximum of 10 steps and then leave, and it's a direction you're already going in the first place. Anyways, after speaking with Lord N, we can finally do what we came into the cave for. I run into a Clink, which is our next team member. I don't really need to explain this one too much, I hope. It's just a gear. I catch the freak nonetheless and name it Gordon for some unknown reason. We then battle our way through Team Plasma and N is waiting for us at the end. I have to embarrass him in a battle once again before we can exit the cave into Mistralton City. I meet Skylar, the gym leader, and she says we have to go help an injured Pokemon at the Celestial Tower before we can battle her. Turns out this was an extreme waste of time and the only good that came from it was DQ evolving into Vanillish and Pig evolving into Emboar. With our team looking slightly better, I take it to the Mistralton gym and challenge Skyla. The fight begins and she leads with Swoobat. I send in Trubbish and set up a Toxic Spikes. We get hit with a Heart Stamp that does a little over half and I retaliate with a weak Sludge Bomb. Here I swap to Panseer and take a devastating Acrobatics before hitting Swoobat with a Bite. It's barely not enough to KO, so Panseer ends up going down to another Acrobatics. I send out Gordon as Skyla uses a Hyper Potion. On the next turn I hit Swoobat with a very weak Charge Beam that does barely any damage at all. Fortunately for us, Swoobat can't really do much damage to us, so I spend a good amount of time spamming Charge Beam and Thunder Shock until we eventually defeat Skyla's first Pokemon. Next up is Swanna, and under normal circumstances Gordon would have been great here, but since he only has 10 HP, a Bubble Beam is more than enough to take him out. I send DQ out next and use Ice Beam, which does a fair bit of damage, meaning one more turn is enough to take out Swanna. Skyla's last Pokemon is Unpheasant, and it's absolutely no match for DQ's Ice Beam, so I proudly watch it go down and graciously take the 6th Unova gym badge. After walking out of the gym, we're once again ambushed by Lord N. This time he decides to ask our literal garbage bag Pokemon about what kind of trainer I am. Somehow N understands the fart noises Trubbish makes as it speaks, and amazingly, Fortnite has some nice things to say about us. I kinda feel bad for bashing its design so much, but oh well, Game Freak was asking for it. A few minutes later, we go through another excruciatingly easy battle with Cheren, after which Fortnite evolves into admittedly one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, Garbodor. Now I can admit the truth, the design of this thing is horrific, but that being said, even horrific looking things need love at times. I then set out to find the last member of our team, and before long, the smushed, ugly pancake fish appears. I capture the Stunfisk and name it what the fuck, but I'll be calling it WTF for short. And the reasoning behind this is what the fuck. After the fight, Gordon evolves into Clang and I head into Icarus City Gym to challenge Bryson. He leads with Vanillish and I send in Pig. I get to move first and hit Vanillish with a Flame Charge. We unfortunately don't get the KO when Bryson uses Acid Armor and Hyper Potion. This allows us to keep boosting our speed with Flame Charge, and after another few turns we defeat Vanillish and find ourselves at +3 speed. Our next foe is Beartech, and even though we're speed boosted, I'm pretty scared of Brine, so I swap Pig into Pansear. We immediately get confused with Swagger and I swap out Pansear yet again. Gordon comes in to tank an Icicle Crash easily, then I get confused with Swagger again. Luckily, I break the confusion and smoke Beartech with a Mirror Shot, which gets a crit and takes it out. Bryson's last Pokemon is Cryogonal, and I elect to go for Gear Grind. It does a ton of damage and easily defeats Cryogonal in one hit. That was by far the easiest gym fight thus far, so we accept our 7th badge and set out once more. We make it outside the gym, and the useless Triad instructs us to meet Ed on top of Dragon Spiral Tower. I battle my way through countless Team Plasma members before reaching the top to find N, who has summoned Zekrom to be his new best friend. He tells us that if we're to match him in battle, we need to tame Reshiram, so we set out to find out how we can do that. We're first meant to head to the Relic Castle to search for any clues about Reshiram. Inside the castle, we find yet another long line of plasma grunts we'll have to plow through. I finally make it to the end, and we're met with Getsis and Alder having a good old-fashioned showdown. They have a quick chat before Getsis leaves, and we head back outside. Our phone immediately rings, and Professor Juniper tells us to come to Nakreen City Museum. We obtain the Lightstone from Lenora, which should help us find Reshiram and befriend it. I'm then instructed to go to Opaloosid City to speak with the gym leader Drayden about where we can find Reshiram. Before we can actually leave, Bianca challenges us one more time, and she is just as easy as ever. Thankfully, this is the last time we have to deal with her, so that is absolutely a plus. I arrive in Opaloosid City to find Getsis giving another suspect speech, and this is where we meet the gym leader Drayden. He must be quite the minimalist because he invites us into his house and he does not own a single piece of furniture. This bothered me so much that I immediately head over to his gym to challenge him. The battle begins and Drayden leads with Fracture. I send out Fortnite and set up a Toxic Spikes. Fracture uses Dragon Dance twice and I use Toxic. Since Fracture is poisoned, I swap to Gordon, and as if 2 Dragon Dances wasn't enough, he sets up another one. Fracture could probably easily take us out right now, but Drayden goes for another Dragon Dance, and I use Mirror Shot one more time to take Fracture out. Next up is Ruddigon, and it gets poisoned from the Toxic Spikes as I swap to Pansear. I take a moderate Dragon Tail, and Pansear gets swapped out as a result. This could have been bad, but the best case scenario happens and DQ comes in. One Ice Beam is so close to taking it out, so we're forced to take a Night Slash before poison damage does the job. Drayden sends in his ace Haxorus, who also gets poisoned right away. Haxorus goes first and uses Dragon Dance. This is only moderately scary though, as we're able to fire off an Ice Beam. The damage is almost enough, and even the poison isn't quite enough to do it. Drayden uses a Hyper Potion, which allows us to shoot off a free Ice Beam, and we find ourselves in the exact same position as last time. We then get hit by a Slash, and DQ unfortunately faints. Luckily for us, Haxorus is still poisoned, and the damage is more than sufficient to defeat Drayden's last Pokemon and win us the fight. We exit the gym, and Professor Juniper is waiting for us. She gives us a generous gift for defeating the 8 gym leaders, and this leads us into the final stretch of the game. We begin our trek to Victory Road, and Cheren ambushes us for one last time. This fight was definitely the closest of all the other ones, so I won't completely skip over it. Haha, I'm just kidding. Cheren gets decimated once again, and we can finally get ourselves into Victory Road. This is definitely one of the most straightforward Victory Roads, so we get out in no time and begin our preparations for the Elite Four. Firstly, I evolve DQ into Vanillux and Gordon into Klinklang, then teach some much needed moves to my team. I decide to just send it and go in without much of a plan at all. I head west first, meaning our first fight will be against the ghost user Chantal. Her first Pokemon is Cofagrigus, and I match it with Pansear. Now unfortunately, Pansear is the only team member that has any super effective moves, but they obviously aren't stabbed, so I choose to set up Leech Seed instead. I'm hit with a big Shadow Ball right after, and this is the point where I realize I'm in quite some trouble. Our team isn't really conditioned to deal with Chantal, so I'm not too sure how the rest of of this fight is gonna go. The only team member I have that won't be hit too hard is Gordon, so I swap to him. We managed to hit quite a few mirror shots as I tank weak Shadow Balls and heal with Leech Seed. I swap back to Pansear, and before too long Chantal heals with a full restore and we're back to square one. I dick around for a few turns until finally Chantal's first Pokemon goes down to Leech Seed and the real trouble begins. She sends in her ace Chandelure next, and Pansear isn't the greatest option for this fight, so I swap him out. The only team member I don't think will get completely smashed is Pig, so I throw him in. I take a Shadow Ball to the chin and it does a colossal amount of damage. I move slower than Chandelure, so I'm hit by a Psychic right after, and this is no doubt enough to take Pig out. This is where things go real bad. I'm able to get Chandelure down to low HP, but once Chantal uses a full restore, then proceeds to KO Pansear, DQ, Gordon, WTF, and Fortnite, and we take our first Elite Four L. I realize the stars are definitely going to have to align for us to win this fight, so I jump right back into attempt 2. The only difference this time is I lead with Fortnite and set up Toxic Spikes. I swap to Gordon as soon as I can due to the fact that Cofagrigus can't really touch us at all. I get it down a decent amount before I sack Gordon and send in Pansear. Somehow our Shadow Claw leaves Cofagrigus on what is most definitely 1 HP, and Chantal uses a full restore. Finally some luck goes our way and a Shadow Ball leaves us on 1 HP, so I'm free to take Cofagrigus out with Bite. Next up again is Chandelure, and I decide to keep in Pansear and get a quick bite off before sacrificing him. I use the opportunity to switch in WTF, and I use a Mud Bomb as soon as I can. That paired with poison damage takes out Chandelure, and we can now get into uncharted waters. Golurk comes in and gets poisoned on the switch. I swap into DQ and use Ice Beam, which is more than enough to take Golurk out. Chantal's last Pokemon is Jellicent, and it takes out DQ really fast with Surf. Jellicent proceeds to annihilate Fortnite as well, meaning we're down to our last 2 Pokemon. I send in Pig and start spamming Assurance and praying. A Surf from Jellicent hits like a truck, but luckily we survive with 13 HP and win the fight with one last Flamethrower. That was an incredibly difficult battle, and I'd hate to have to do it again after losing to another Elite Four member. Next I head into Grimsley's chambers and invite him to be our next victim. He leads with Scrafty as I send in Fortnite. I go for my usual Toxic Spikes as we're hit with a Crunch. We get extremely low after another Crunch, so I swap Fortnite out for Pansear. As soon as I'm able to, I fire off a Seed Bomb, which does pretty mediocre damage. On the next turn I take a Poison Jab to the chin, which isn't enough to take us out on its own, but the poison damage afterwards has other plans. I decide to try DQ's Ice Beam out, and since we're faster than Scrafty, we move first and take it out. Grimsley's next Pokemon is Crocodile, and since DQ is in, I couldn't be happier. We tank an Earthquake first, then pulverize Crocodile with an Ice Beam. Next is Bisharp, and I promptly swap to WTF. We're hit with a Night Slash on the switch, which crits and leaves WTF on 23 HP. We get a Paralysis with Static, then throw a Mud Bomb doing about 2/3. This is when we're slapped with an X-Scissor and WTF goes bye-bye. It's now safe to swap in Pig, and I outspeed Bisharp and KO it with a Flamethrower. Grimsley now sends in his last Pokemon Liepard, and this thing is pretty much a huge joke. Pig falls in love with it at first, but once we finally break through, a Flamethrower KOs and we officially win the fight. Now next up is Caitlyn, or as I now refer to her, the Uber Bitch. I'll save you the suspense. She didn't just beat my team, she utterly dismantled them. I watched helplessly as Fortnite, Pansear, and Gordon fell like dominoes, while Reuniclus just floated there, smug, laughing like it was just swatting flies. Eventually, WTF manages to take Reuniclus and her next Pokemon Sigilyph out, and then this fat pink blob enters the fight, and I see this one slipping through my fingers. I mess around for a little while, but eventually DQ goes down as Masharna dies to poison. This is when we send in WTF again to face Gothitelle, and it just simply flicks us away. Pig goes down as well, and that means we've lost the fight. I was going to have to do some serious thinking and soul searching if I was ever going to have a chance to win this challenge. After some much needed alterations to my team's moves and held items, I storm right back into Chantal's chamber and try my next attempt. This fight was somehow even closer than the last, but I escape with the victory by the skin of my teeth. I stick with the same order as last time and head over to Grimsley next. This fight was also way closer than last time, but we prevail once again and head over to the room of Uber Bitch. The battle begins, and before long, I'm already down to 2 team members. With Pansear and Pig gone, I send in Gordon and KO the Reuniclus with Gear Grind. Caitlyn sends out Gothitelle next, and I switch to WTF as soon as I can. I use Earthquake and Thunderbolt a few times, but unfortunately it's not quite enough to take Gothitelle out, so WTF gets KO'd by Psychic. The rest of this fight ends up being just as painful as the last, and in a few tragic minutes, our team has been eviscerated once again. Now I take a very long, purposeful deep breath before diving back in again. We're pros against Chantal and Grimsley now, so I dispose of them easily before coming face to face with Caitlyn once more. I unfortunately lose DQ to Reuniclus, but amazingly that was the only casualty as we managed to take it out with Pansear using Shadow Claw. Gothitelle is out next, and we have to sack Gordon to safe swap into WTF. I stay in long enough to do some damage with Thunderbolt, then switch out once again. This time I send out Pansear and KO Gothitelle with the Shadow Claw. This means somehow we still have the majority of our team, and and all we need to do is defeat a sad little Musharna. I keep Pansear in to set up a Leech Seed before it gets taken out by Psychic. I go with Pig next, and a couple of assurances plus poison damage KOs Musharna, meaning at long last we have defeated Caitlyn. This feels like it should have been the end of the Elite Four and possibly the game in general, but we still have some business to take care of. I march on up to Marshall and his strange blue lips, and the final Elite Four fight begins. Marshall sends in Throw and we lead with Pansear. I'm first hit with a Bulldoze and retaliate with a Leech Seed. I go with Seed Bomb as soon as I can and Throw goes into the yellow. I swap to WTF and tank a Bulldoze next. I rip off an Earthquake and that with Leech Seed takes Throw out. Next out is Sock and I swap to Fortnite. I use Toxic Spikes and I'm hit with a powerful Stone Edge which almost takes Fortnite out. I switch to Pansear and sacrifice him for a Leech Seed. I send out DQ and get hit with a couple of Stone Edges and immediately go down. Not sure what my plan was there, but we're not out of the battle yet. Gordon comes in and a few cycles of Gear Grind burns through both of Marshall's full restores. One more Gear Grind KOs Sock and Marshall sends in Conkeldurr. It gets poisoned on the switch and I use a Gear Grind before getting taken out by a Hammer Arm. This allows me to send in Pig, who should be able to finish this battle himself. Conkeldurr gets KO'd easily by our first Flamethrower and we're on to Marshall's last Pokemon. I think I'm in the clear, but Mienshao has other plans as it crits with high jump kick. I decide to throw in our MVP WTF. All it takes is one meager little Earthquake to defeat Mienshao and finally win us the Elite Four challenge. This is the point in most Pokemon games where you would normally challenge the champion, but instead we find out that the actual champion just got torched by N, so now we have to take care of business. We now get to witness one of the most badass cutscenes in Pokemon, and N just spawns an entire fucking castle around the Pokemon League. Somehow Charon shows up and we escape into the castle before he can challenge us to another battle. The 7 sages are waiting for us and they spew some garbage, then all 8 gym leaders show up in honestly a pretty cool moment. Definitely not something you see in every game. I end up snooping around N's childhood room for a bit and holy shit, this guy had it pretty good. I mean, look at all this stuff. I make it to the end of the castle next and Getsus shows himself at last. He gives us a little pre-game speech, then sends us into the Octagon with Lord N. He doesn't want to battle just yet, so we listen to him drone on about some more political nonsense, and once again Zekrom gets summoned. We go ahead and summon Reshiram as well, and since this dude actually has an incredible design, he will not be joining the team this time. N is finally ready to battle and he generously heals our team before coming after us. N sends in Zekrom first and I lead with Gordon. Gordon takes a Fusion Bolt to the noggin and a crit takes him right out. I send in DQ and ready an Ice Beam, but Zekrom sets up a Light Screen and half the damage gets negated. This is the end of DQ's time in this battle for now, so I swap to WTF. We luckily avoid a Zen Headbutt, then smash Zekrom with an Earthquake. WTF is such a boss that he gets a crit and KOs Zekrom on the first try. Next up is Vanillux, so I switch to Pig. Pig takes a Blizzard pretty well, then I hit it with a Flamethrower. Light Screen is still up, so it doesn't do nearly as much damage as I'd hoped. I get hit with a Flash Cannon, which tickles a little, and then I KO Vanillux with the Flamethrower. Caracosta is up next and I swap in Pansear. I use a Seed Bomb as soon as possible and we get the one-hit KO. And sends out Kling Clang and I swap to Fortnite. We're hit a couple of times before I'm able to use Toxic Spikes. This is all we need Fortnite for, so I switch to Pig. Unfortunately, we get outsped and taken out by a Focus Blast, so quite a miscalculation by me. I'm not worried in the slightest though, as he gives us the opportunity to send out the GOAT WTF. I absorb a Night Slash, then use a devastating Earthquake on Kling Clang. It turns out this is a Zoroark and it shows itself at last. I tank another Night Slash, then finish off Zoroark with Earthquake. And second last Pokemon is his real Kling Clang, and with WTF on our side, there's very little that can go wrong here. A couple of Earthquakes later, we find ourselves face to face with N's final team member, Archeops. Here, I unfortunately decide to sacrifice WTF in order to inflict paralysis on Archeops. This also allows us to switch into DQ, where I can just use an Ice Beam to KO Archeops and win the fight against Lord N. Little did I know, however, that we were just getting started. N is speechless after the fight and Getsus comes storming in and throws one of the greatest tantrums in Pokemon history. I mean, seriously, dude. It actually makes you feel pretty bad for N. We come to find out Getsus is just a straight up maniac and he wants to challenge us to a battle, and boy, let me tell you, I was not prepared for what was to come. On attempt 1, his Cofagrigus rolls up, throws out some moves, and straight up deletes 2 team members plus Pig like it's nothing. I'm scrambling, tossing out max revives like candy at Halloween, spamming potions like my bag is infinite, and still I got flattened. I decided, okay, no more items. I wanted to do this the honorable way. I hadn't used items the entire run and I was not going to use them now. I went in for attempt 2 with an actual plan and somehow got obliterated even faster. Attempt 3 was the exact same story. At this point I wasn't strategizing, I was simply floundering. I had to ask myself, what will make attempt 4 different? And this is where I made one of the biggest mistakes of my career. See, I screwed up. And I know what I'm about to say sounds like the most suspicious fake cover-up nonsense you've ever heard, but I swear on everything I love, I'm telling the truth. I forgot to record the beginning of the battle. Like the first 40% of it was just gone. I was so locked in, so focused, so hyped that my recording button in OBS was just sitting there collecting dust. By the time I realized it, Coffagrigus, Bisharp, and the big bad Hydreigon were disposed of, but you know what? I'm a professional, kind of. So instead of the real footage, I'm going to recreate the first half of the fight using only the most cutting-edge, high-budget visuals known to mankind. Anyway, after a dramatic series of events that definitely happened exactly like that, Ghetsis sends in Buffalon and we whittle it down before swapping to Pansear. A single Seed Bomb takes care of the Afroman and Ghetsis sends in Seismitoad. A Seed Bomb is quad effective against this fella, so it goes down super easy. Ghetsis sends in his final Pokemon Electros and we can see the finish line. I send in Fortnite in order to use Toxic. This means I have to sacrifice Fortnite unfortunately, but it won't be in vain. DQ comes in next and has the honor of being the one to seal this battle for good. A few Ice Beams is all it takes and we finally taste sweet, sweet victory. After the fight, we watch as Ghetsis gets dragged away by Charon and Alder and N gives his closing remarks. N hops onto his Zekrom and flies off into the sunset. The credits roll and I'm free at last. Mission success. We were able to beat Pokemon Black using the most putrid designs this game has to offer. I'd love some suggestions of challenges to try next. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I had a blast pulling my hair out to complete this challenge. I hope you all enjoyed and I will see you in the next one.